pieces.
Yeah.
What kind of styles? Are they, being both from the Chinese school of chess, quite similar kind of styles or very different?
Similar in general, very dynamic. Their instincts are quite ambitious. They want to take risks. They want to play for the maximum in every position. Here we see the Nimzo Indian defense, something that I played against Niels Grandelius a lot last week. But either way, they know their opening repertoires inside out, these two. So really tense position here. I think it's just going to come down to who can get the attack, who can get the momentum on their sides, and most likely that player will be able to win. Tingjie, though, is a really tenacious defender. I've seen her defend some really difficult positions. I once played a 7-hour game against her where I thought I was winning after 10 moves, and then it took me another 120 moves to win. So, yeah, she's really tenacious.
Oh, come on, David, we know that you like to play long games.
I like to torture myself just as much as the opponents. OK, meanwhile, very sensible play, white taking centre. We saw a trade of one set of pawns, both sides castling, and now actually not that common a move, this bishop dropping back. Usually there, black captures the white knight with this dark squared bishop. Black's dark squared bishop now on the side of the board. But this is still relatively known. White has a variety of moves and, OK, capturing a pawn. And now we might well see a trade of bishop for knight and then a queen trade.
Yeah, capturing the pawn is a little bit unusual, actually. It's much more common to actually step forward with queen 2 squares. And capturing the pawn, for this reason, bishop takes knight, and suddenly white's pawn structure, not ideal, hasn't really been played.
Yeah, I've actually studied this a little bit, mostly from the white side, and I didn't really like it. Black's knight now can jump into the middle of the board, and white is temporarily a pawn up, but look at white's pawns on the left half of the board. Double pawns on the c-file, and both of white's pawns on the c-file now attacked by this black knight. It's a double attack. Black is guaranteed to win one of those pawns back, and yes, white has the bishop pair, but also look at white's dark squared bishop at the bottom of the board. At the bottom of the board, that's not a good piece. It's just blocked in by all its own pawns.
The bar already shifting towards Zhu Wenjun.
Yeah, I'm slightly surprised because when I looked at this, I thought black was just completely fine. But maybe the computer knows better. Maybe white has a way to get the bishops working, especially that dark squared bishop. And Zhu Wenjun, I would have thought, having rushed into this position, having grabbed a pawn quite early in the game, she must have studied the consequences here. But then again, Tingjie playing really, really quickly up to this point.
I do find with Zhu Wenjun is that she's very well versed in the opening up to a point. And then afterwards, you can perhaps go that one move deeper, because whenever I've played her, I've known that slightly bit more than her in the opening, and I've managed to get a more comfortable position.
Yeah.
So maybe this is something here, because I'm looking at the database and only 5 games, and not a great score for white either. Only 1 victory and 2 victories for black.
By the way, both of them, they look a little bit sleepy, I think. And maybe it can be a problem, no? That sometimes you can just mix something in the opening if you don't feel very well or just you don't feel yourself a little bit. I remember myself being in China and facing the same troubles. All of us, we had these problems with jet lag, and maybe they have also some issues.
Yeah, they do start very late at night in China, and they will be finishing today's action, today's games, I think in the early hours of the morning, 3, 4 a.m. So it will be difficult for them to keep their energy levels high. But meanwhile, Tingjie looking like she's been playing quickly, maybe just still in her opening book, having studied this before. But Zhu Wenjun, it is worrying that this position, even if it's rare, that she doesn't really know which white pawn to defend or how to develop white's pieces. It's a really complex position. Here, I could easily spend 10, 15 minutes, but Zhu Wenjun, she needs to move quickly because it's rapid chess. And yeah, I'm slightly concerned, despite the evaluation bar, that white's position is maybe the more tricky to handle. It's harder to play white's position. Black's next moves are easy. Black wants to grab a pawn, maybe bring the black bishop out. And OK, Zhu Wenjun does bring her bishop off the first rank, connecting the white rooks. But look at that white bishop. It's still stuck, staring at its own pawns. And Tingjie, I'm pretty sure she's going to go back and capture a pawn now with her knight. She's a pawn down temporarily, and I think it's going to be hard to delay that tempting move too long.
All right. Well, it's exciting to follow a game between 2 female players. It only happened once before that we had 2 female players in a tournament, and we talk about it quite often, Jovanka, but what would you say is the state of female chess?
It's getting better,
yeah.
I have to say, when you compare it back to the older times.
Yep.
I mean, it was really quite seriously bad. And now I see that a lot of more women are getting stronger and stronger. And we're kind of talking about stronger in depth as well.
Yeah.
You know, there's quite a few, there's I think about 5, I mean, don't quote me on this, it's, women who've passed the 2600 level, which is very, very strong. And of course, we have Judith Polgar leading the charge. You know, she was the lady to break the 2700 mark. And especially now with the Queen's Gambit, the movie, and so much chess being played online. I mean, we see some real trailblazers, just encouraging women to play chess. I mean, we have Jennifer Shahade. She's just written a book called Chess Queen.
Yes,
got
I
on my
heard, yeah.
Kindle. I can't wait to read it. I mean, if anyone wants to go and buy it, they should.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it tells a story about players, chess players, and it is getting better. Slowly by slowly, the numbers are just increasing. So it is positive.
Yeah. And well, Anastasia, you mentioned you've also been a commentator on these Women's World Championship matches as well. Are you very interested and into it to see female chess and women in chess growing as well?
Yes, yes, of course. I mean, it's my favorite topic, women chess, and of course I was happy to be present at the World Championship matches myself. I think what we have to do, we should try just to bring more and more girls and women into chess. I mean, in all levels, from all countries. And actually, I'm trying to do something for that too. I mean, FIDE has a special project now for refugee camp, and we have a girls' club in Kenya. And every Saturday, also today, I'm giving online lessons to the girls in 3 schools in Kenya, in the Kakuma refugee camp. This program is run by, was actually, the idea to start the program was by Anastasia Sorokina from FIDE, she's a vice president of FIDE, and Dana Reznitsa-Ozola, another very powerful woman in chess, manager in FIDE. So she, management director in FIDE, she actually supported this idea, and the new project is running now.
Fantastic.
And so I'm really, so 150 girls hopefully will know how to play chess. I mean, and they know already how to play chess, and I hope they will stay with us. And this is my small contribution, and I hope this program will spread around the world, and we have more and more girls playing chess.
Oh, what a fantastic initiative. I have to find a way to sneak into that Zoom call to get that lesson.
You absolutely do. And just talking about FIDE, it's actually 2022 is their year of the woman in chess. And they will be running a whole sort of program throughout the year to encourage women to play and also to have conferences. And it will also be in conjunction with Chess 24.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Music to my ears. And well, I did hear another move coming in after quite a long pause.
Yeah, a couple of moves have happened. Black did indeed go and recapture a pawn, as we predicted. So now material is level. But Zhu Wenjun has created a bit of a threat with her last move with white. So if we just jump in to explain what both players are thinking about right now, white's last move was to push a pawn forward. And we mentioned this in the last game. When in doubt, push your corner pawns forward, push those flank pawns. But here there is a direct threat, and it's all about this bishop. I mentioned it earlier. On the last move, it was just a blocked-in piece, just staring at its own pawns. Look at this. Can't get through this diagonal, can't get through this way either. So Zhu Wenjun, by pushing a pawn forward, has initiated the threat of creating a nasty pin on this diagonal, hitting the black knight and indirectly the rook behind it. And I'm slightly surprised by this last move, I must admit. Lei Tingjie just pushing her pawn forward. Yes, she defends her knight, but I felt maybe it was more pertinent to actually block this white pawn from stepping forward, for example, by bringing the knight to the side of the board, hitting this bishop and just gaining a bit of time. But now, after black's pawn stepped forward, I think Zhu Wenjun, there's nothing else for her to do. She has to improve this bishop. And once this happens, maybe a small advantage for white, because suddenly there is some uncomfortable pressure. If black, for example, just develops a bishop, struggling to even find a move, then now after bishop takes knight and a recapture, white can start jumping up to the 7th rank, for example. White can maybe create some annoying threats against this bishop, and it looks roughly balanced, but it's just easier for white to play. Also, this pawn is a bit weak if the white knight can jump in later on to try and attack it. And this has happened. The bishop is now pinning this knight, and along this diagonal, some serious pressure. So maybe Zhu Wenjun, things have gone in her favour just over the last move or two.
Yeah, I like the line that you showed for Zhu Wenjun. I mean, it seems it's difficult for Lei Tingjie to actually untangle her pieces. Still a lot of excitement on the board. And talking about excitement and enthusiasm, we still want you at home to be enthusiastic about the game. So we are still asking you to send us your chess tweets, send us your questions, your comments, and also your selfies using the hashtag #ChessChamps, and we will feature them on the show.
Yes. All right, and some news about the donations as well. I hear rumors we have now passed $10,000 in our fundraiser to UNICEF. Fantastic news, you guys. Again, thank you so much to everyone donating, and keep doing it. chess24.com/donate to make your donation for UNICEF, helping the people in and around Ukraine.
$10,000.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it's so beautiful. And
goosebumps.
yeah, and I was reminded when Anastasia said that the thing that gives her hope is actually to look for the helpers. You know, when there's this time of such conflict and you feel such darkness, look for the people helping. And thank you, everyone, for your very kind support. And yeah, they won already. Yeah.
How have you been sort of affected, Anastasia? Or what has it been like to see the neighboring countries of Ukraine taking in refugees, of course, and also the chess community and the way they have reacted?
Yes, of course. I mean, chess community, we can see so many things happening these days, so many events, so many initiatives all around. You know, we can see all websites, all chess players are trying to contribute. And my Facebook is full of these opportunities and possibilities. And that's great, actually. I think the whole chess community united, let's say, to help either to children in Ukraine or families or other chess players. So, and it's great that it's happening. And actually you feel that you belong to this community, and it's important in these times to feel that. Yeah, so some people whom I never met in my life, I mean, just because they know me as a commentator, they kind of send the messages, they ask how am I doing, my family, they send some help. So it's really important. Just sometimes just some nice words, it's also really important to hear.
Yeah.
Yes. So thanks for everybody who is now donating during this stream and during this show. For many days actually you can have these opportunities, and it's great.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we hear many moves coming in here, David.
Yeah, so black brought one knight to the side of the board. I mentioned this type of idea a bit earlier, hitting the white light squared bishop, which did retreat, and now black has developed Lei Tingjie has developed her remaining bishop, and there we go. This trade had to happen before the black rooks went to defend the white knight. So now, instead of white having a bad pawn structure and fractured pawns, isolated pawns on this left side of the board, black also has weaknesses there. And this last move, jumping in with the white knight, I quite like it. Maybe other options as well for Zhu Wenjun. I really want to see the white rook slide across one square, maybe put some pressure on the black bishop, maybe slide up to the 5th rank to attack that black knight on the side of the board. White's knight now is threatening to maybe jump in, attack a rook, attack some pawns. Black has weaknesses, and if you compare the pieces right now, white's knight in the center is much better than black's knight. White's rook in the center on an open line, better than black's rooks. The bishops, it's not clear which is best, but the knights and rooks favors white. So Zhu Wenjun in control for now. And Lei Tingjie, that's why she's burning time on the clock. That's why she's been spending a few minutes over the last few moves. She knows there's pressure coming into the black position, and it's not clear how to deal with that. It's not even short-term pressure that can be neutralized over the next 2 or 3 moves. She needs to be accurate for quite a long time now, I feel.
Okay, so it's definitely heating up this game.
Yeah, and despite the fact queens are off, despite the fact it is almost the end game, or pretty much the end game, still a draw far, far away. Anything is still possible here. And, OK, challenging rooks. That's sensible, at least.
Yes.
I feel we've seen that a lot today. Well, this is only the second game we followed, but it was a lot about those rooks in the first game as well.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, now it's a typical situation when we have the open file to put the rooks there and to try to understand who is the main piece, who is the boss, white or black. Yeah. So now actually black moved his rook on the open d file and trying to trade at least one of the rooks to remove this pressure.
It's like a staring contest. The rooks are just staring at each other. Neither side wants to blink, because if black ever trades the white rook, white will dominate the open file. If white ever trades the rooks, black will dominate the open file. So, yeah, both rooks just staring at each other, neither side wanting to give way now.
Well, actually, I have a question about rooks and open files. Will that basically always be an aim you have in your games, to create an open file and put your rook on it?
Kaya, I'm so impressed with your
I'm
knowledge.
learning.
It's great. You see?
Yeah,
I really
can't fault that at all. If you see an open file, put a rook on it, basically.
Yeah.
It's either that or the 7th rank for white and the 2nd rank for black. Those are the kind of ideal destinations for rooks. Also, if you have a passed pawn, put the rook behind it, because rooks are great at supporting pawns storming up the board. So those, I think, are maybe just the general outlines for what you want to do with your rooks.
I was taught a very useful guideline for assessing the value of the pieces. And traditionally, when we first taught the games, we kind of taught these hard and fast rules that the queen is worth 9 points, the rook is worth 5 points, the knight is worth 3, the bishop is worth 3, and the pawns are worth 1. And they said, well, actually, to help you understand that it's all about what pieces do rather than what they are, think of it like this. So when a rook is on an open line, it's actually worth 5.5 points. When a knight is on a post, they can't be challenged and is really effective, can be up to worth like 5 points. When a bishop is on an open line, and a useful open line, well, suddenly it can be, it can be 5 points, even more. And if your bishop is looking at its own pawn, it's not much of a piece, going down. And if you think of things like a sliding scale, then it can help you even come to terms with sacrificing your own pieces. Because this is something materialists like myself really struggle with. They're like, no, it's mine, it's my queen, I don't want to give it up. But if you think of the sliding scale, it helps you let go.
Yeah, the trick is to just compare what's still on the board. So you might have sacrificed loads of pieces, but that's off the board now. You forget about that. If the quality of your pieces is much better than your opponent's regarding what remains, then often things work out, especially if it's an attack versus defense situation. You might have sacrificed a rook or a piece, but if all of your opponent's extra pieces are on the wrong side of the board, then it doesn't really matter. And often your attack will break through if your attacking pieces are likely to overwhelm the defenders. So, yeah, it's definitely a sliding scale, as Jovanka mentions. And in this endgame right now, it's Wenjun's turn to think. I'm trying to kind of figure out how white can break through here, how white can improve the position. It's slightly tempting to do a bit of a dance with the white knight, but I do like the white knight and where it stands right now. I don't like that white rook in the corner. Maybe you could slide it across one square. Maybe you could bring the white bishop to a better square, but lots of choice. And that's the one bad thing about white's position. There's a lot of tempting moves. And in rapid chess, you just have to trust your instincts. You just have to choose one of them and hope for the best sometimes. So what do you ladies think?
I definitely think an improving move is in order. And I think, I also was instinctively thinking of your move, the rook in the corner, moving itself to an open line. Another idea that I was thinking of was maybe to introduce the white king into the game, step forward with the f-pawn, move up one square, and maybe the white king can think about joining the fun.
Yeah, so Jovanka, your move, maybe pushing this pawn forward one square, maybe even 2 squares, and next move just entering the action. Why not? Your pieces are better than black's at the moment, so why not improve your king as well? And the other move we mentioned there would be to just slide across one square, maybe hinting at kind of just putting some pressure on the black knight. You're not actually hitting this bishop right now because this bishop is defended by the black knight on the side of the board, so you want to destabilize the defender, this knight. And, for example, if black thinks, OK, now this rook's moved, now I can trade, then white would be happy to just spend another move with this rook because, as mentioned, white has won the staring contest. White occupies this whole open file. And, yeah, right now, this causes some problems for black. For example, even if black gets time to kick away this white knight, white's knight does have opportunities at some point to, for example, even jump forward into the position to attack this isolated pawn. And yeah,
it
really
would be
tense
nice
position.
to continue this variation with if black moves his rook on d8, what can happen in this case?
Yeah, nice. So trying to maybe create some type of pin,
Yes.
but you always have to make sure your pieces are defended, and this rook is loose. So Anastasia.
Yes, I think knight f6 can come.
Nice.
Yes,
the white
nice.
knight jumps out with a check.
With a check.
That's why we say look at checks in every position first, because checks gain time and they can be super effective. And after this knight sacrifices itself, we see this rook undefended, and white definitely wins the staring contest this time. Rook takes rook, check, wins a piece. So this is a few moves down the line, but this is the type of thing that can happen if white is energetic and if black doesn't defend correctly. So the more I look at it, the more I just like this move, trying to persuade black to trade rooks on white's terms, but also creating the threat of trying to hit this black knight on the side of the board. This knight's actually on an outpost, but we do say that knights on the rim are dim, so why not try and go for it? Why not try and attack it? And using the white rook. But then again, Jovanka's move makes a lot of sense. You could maybe argue for moving this bishop, just kind of planting it on a good square, trying to force black to make concessions, loosen up his position. Zhu and Jun, either way, this is not the type of position where you have to spend 6 minutes. I probably would, so I'm being a hypocrite, but yeah, in rapid chess, I think, not 6 minutes.
Wow, 6
Yeah,
minutes.
6
already.
minutes is too much.
You could play 3 games already, yes?
Yeah, play a couple of blitz games in that time.
I have to mention one thing. So I played Wenjun twice. First time I won in a kind of convincing way. Second time I actually won on time. And it was somehow she just went into some kind of trance and she was considering all her options. And okay, admittedly, you know, I was slightly better, very slightly better, and she was kind of adjusting to that change. And then
And this
she
was a
froze.
classical game. or-
And this was a classical game. She
Long
just
game.
froze. Yeah.
Jovanka, wait a minute, you have 2-0 score against the world champion.
Yeah.
Really?
No, yeah, no, I mean, I've only played 2 games. It's not-
But still, I mean, something to be proud of. I mean,
But it was before she became world champion.
Yeah,
That's also, but okay. Anyway, she's still a very strong player. But what I noticed is that she just froze. That was my kind of observation. And the clock, I felt really terrible actually, just saying you lost on time.
It rarely happens in long games these days, because you do gain a bit of time after every move, but sometimes you just forget. Players do forget about the clock. And I've always thought it's interesting, actually, the world champions, Magnus Carlsen and Zhu Wenjun, they're both 31 years old. They're both the same age. So, yeah, both at the peak of their powers. And Zhu Wenjun, though, shaking her head. Maybe she's just struggling to find a breakthrough. Often in rapid chess, at least from my experience, at some point, every player hates their position. You might get a game where things aren't going well. You just have to kind of trust your instincts. And if there's no direct threat, white can never be worse in this position. If you want to even make a draw at some point, you just trade all the rooks off and it's fine. So worst comes to worst, just improve a piece. Just stop calculating. And I've noticed Zhu Wenjun in particular, but Chinese players in general, are very, very, very good at calculating. But sometimes they rely on it too much. Sometimes it's nice to just take a step back and just generalize about the position, do what we do, just kind of, okay, this piece belongs here, this piece is better than that piece, just the kind of going back to basics. And I mean, I forget to do that sometimes in my games. It's so easy to get carried away in the position, but it really helps, especially with decision making.
Yes.
8.5 minutes now,
It's,
Zhu Wenjun.
It's a bit of a luxury.
Yeah.
And David actually mentioned the word improvement, and I just wanted to put a question to both Nastia and David and ask them Suki's question.
There comes the move after almost 9 minutes.
And it is an improving rook move that we did discuss.
Good move.
Yeah. And they ask, is it very important to study the openings and can they help you improve your rating?
Yeah, what I can say, I mean, all my life I was struggling in the openings, and actually I was following this idea that you have to survive in the opening, and then here we go, finally the middle game, and here the fun starts. So let's say I cannot say that I was a really good student. So probably we should ask this question, David.
I feel I heard actually the exact same from David, surviving the opening.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm the best student when it comes to openings. I have gone through phases in my life where I've studied openings a lot, and it does pay off from time to time, but it's not the only thing you should study. I think that's the main point. Openings, they're a means to an end. Very rarely do you win directly out of the opening. Occasionally if your opponent makes mistakes, but it's just to give you your type of position or position you enjoy playing. So it's exactly what Anastasia's just said. For example, in my match against Niels Grandelius recently, I only studied openings in order to survive and to get through to the middle game in positions that I enjoyed. It wasn't about winning out of the opening. It wasn't about getting an advantage or even an equal position. It was just about getting positions that I like to play.
So I just had a thought. So, okay, if you are dedicated to the opening, so you should study the opening, how to win better in games.
Yeah.
Don't worry about defensive ones. And then how to win attacks. So those are the 3 things. And there you go. You got a nice little route of improvement. Yeah. If you don't want to study openings, you've got to study defending bad positions. Counter-attacks.
Yes, your creativity.
Exactly, creativity. And, okay, yeah, you're set.
Okay, so I guess it's up to sort of finding your style then.
Basically, study everything. That's
Yeah, just actually chess is just a fun game to play. You know, even if you don't know the openings, try to follow the principles of the openings, like take care of your center, centralize your pieces, do castling. You know, those principles. Try to survive, and then let's say move on. And yeah, so, but still, David plays in a different level, and we should still, he's a very modest person. He knows openings, I think, still in a very decent level.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, to get from one level to another level, for example, studying openings will be a good way to really improve.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the easiest things to study, but it is very, very effective, especially with the white side. You can put immediate pressure on your opponents, so I recommend studying openings for sure, but yeah, just don't let it be at expense of the other parts of your game. And okay, meanwhile, Tingjie attacking the white knight, kicking it away from the center, and something similar to what we showed. The white knight did jump in to the black position, actually attacking a pawn now. Black's pawn on the c5 square, attacked by the white knight. And it's not so easy to defend. There's also a potential possible threat of white's rook coming up next to the black knight. And okay, Tingjie really has to calculate well. Both players have to start calculating now. It is becoming more tactical, this endgame. And yeah, what do we think?
Wow, it's interesting, actually. First of all, the knight went too far away, yes? So you have to make sure that you don't lose it anywhere. If you move your piece too far, try to make sure it will not be trapped. Yes, so now rook c8 is a very concrete move, right? The last move of black, and I don't know, I started to calculate some ideas with knight c5 or something like this. All these are in the air, taking this pawn, but I'm not sure what's going on at the moment.
Yeah, it's really interesting because white's kind of semi-threat, as we mentioned, of bringing the white rook up, okay, has actually happened on the board, so we don't need to show it, but this is going to be met by black's bishop moving. The black knight can't move because then the black bishop would fall to the white rook, so black's bishop has to counterattack by hitting the white rook. And there's two directions you can go in. You can either go to the side of the board, hit the white rook and the bishop behind it. There we go, it's happened. Or you could have gone the other direction, but we do see a trade, bishop for knight, and who's this going to favour? Look at this, white's knight is deep in black's camp. Black's bishop is a bit of an intruder here in white's camp as well. Both pieces out on a limb, and I'm expecting white's rook to shift up to one square. I'm not sure which square though. Do you step up one square, hit the black bishop? Do you step up the whole way to the 6th rank?
Yeah,
this is definitely heating up now at the clock times as well.
And case it stepped up to attack the bishop, but Nastya, it's because your Twitter handle is called Nastya.
You can call me whatever you want. Nastya is fine. Anastasia is fine.
Yeah, sorry. Well, your idea of the white knight getting trapped, it's certainly in the air, actually. It can't get trapped right now. Because of your ideas of knight takes pawn jack.
Yes, actually it was discussed long time ago. Yes, this small trick. But now black cannot move his rook forward in order to threaten the knight because of the same trick. Knight takes the pawn with a check. Wow. So at the same time, if this rook will take the bishop, then the knight will be hanging, right? At the same time.
Yeah. So maybe we can just show this because right now there's kind of a threat, but it's kind of not a threat, as you mentioned. It looks like you're eyeing up this bishop, but if black just moves, for example, then if you take this bishop, the white knight falls, and all pawns here are level, and this one would just be an equal position. The one thing I want to see white do, though, at some point in this type of position, or even if we rewind a couple of moves, I want to see white create some space for this king, because you've got to be really careful. For example, in that variation, after rook takes bishop, rook takes knight, there is a threat of checkmate. And again, this type of idea will exist in lots of different types of positions until you pick up Harry or Gary, one of these H or G pawns, and you create some space for the white monarch. So, yeah, right now, really, really tense position. I'm expecting maybe this bishop to just move because you can't keep it there forever. But then again, white is attacking this pawn, so maybe Wenjun will temporarily go a pawn up. One idea maybe is, for example, I'm looking for squares for this bishop. You could go back this way. And if you retreat this way, now you could make use of the fact that this is a pin by bringing your bishop back. And still some pressure. OK, she has done this, Tingjie. So white will have won a pawn, but this knight is completely pinned. And some pressure on it right now, attacked by black's rook and by black's bishop.
And the bar is reacting to that move.
Yeah, I thought it was the most natural, but it's such a difficult position. Tingjie, we mentioned she was coming under pressure, and this has happened. White has won a pawn. And I'm expecting if the bishop does drop back, which it has just done, then now before it's too late, you need to give your king some breathing space. Push one of these 3 pawns in front of your king. I'm not sure which one is best, but you have to just give your king some breathing space just in case things go wrong.
All right. Well, women world champion Ju Wenjun, the other world champion Magnus Carlsen is the bar all the way over to his side in his game against Hare Krishna. Ding Liren, the other Chinese player in this tournament, we have 3. The bar also all the way over to his side in the game against Eric Hansen. And this one, will it end up with a winner?
It's still in the balance. Black is fighting for the draw, though. That is the one thing. Unless we see a big blunder, I don't think we'll see Lei Tingjie win this game. Ju Wenjun now creating some space for her king. I think if things go wrong for white, at the very least, you should just be able to trade off everything and go for a draw. I like this last move for white. And
Finally.
yes, finally. We were waiting for it to happen. And as both players tick down now, Ju Wenjun to 3 minutes, Lei Tingjie to 5 minutes, I still think we'll see some surprises. It's still not the type of position that's easy to hold for black. It's still not the type of position that's easy to convert for white. So.
And right now, less than 90 minutes to go in the auction for David's lucky chest. I'm going to call it lucky chest tie now. The current bid, $300. Fantastic. Ooh. But you still have, 88 minutes to make your bid for this chest tie. So head into CCT auction. Is that correct? CCTauction.com. Yes.
Yeah. Actually, I'm wondering if it's going to be the most expensive chest tie ever.
Oh! Going to be in the Guinness World Record book. You're used to that, David.
Wow, yeah. It's been a while since I've been a record holder. But no, either way, thank you, everyone at home. And yeah, those in Ukraine definitely appreciate
Absolutely.
the generosity.
Yeah. All right. Well, this game, I mean, both players are down to very little time on the clock. And I understand on you guys. It's tense. It must be hard to play this position.
Yeah. And suddenly Black's going for mass trades. Going to exchange everything off. Are you surprised about that, Anastasia? Because now lots of trades. Black's going for White's extra pawn. White's a pawn up. But White's going to win a pawn back in the process. It's going to be quite one-sided now, as in terms of winning chances, playing for 2 results. There's no risk at all for White. It's going to be hard to win this one, but rook endgame's there, tricky at the best of times. No matter what the level, there's always going to be chances when you are a pawn up.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's also a c-pawn that White has as extra material. And that's a pawn that's actually easier for the White king to assist, should it need to be pushed. And I wasn't sure about Ju Wenjun's last move. I wasn't sure whether it was worth pushing the central pawn up 1 square just to kind of control Black's pawns a little bit more, or should she be going for this pawn push?
I think she's just following the rule that we talked about the last game. When in doubt, just push Harry the H-pawn. Simon Williams watching at home. Shout out to Simon. Yeah, he's going to be watching this just with glee.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it's quite useful in rook endgames as well to push pawns as far down the board as possible, just because if it comes down to a pawn race, your pawns are ready to promote later in the game. Also, if you stop your opponent's pawns from advancing, you could fix a weakness. For example, the pawn in front of the black king now cannot move 2 squares. That pawn might be, it might cause the black king to be tied down. Okay, black now gaining extra space.
Yes, actually, Jovanka, you were right when you proposed the move before, I think, because now black gained some space, yes, by pushing this F pawn.
I wasn't sure whether you needed to be like super precise to maximize any winning chances. I mean, because after all, the White king can still run towards the center. I mean, this is a big idea in this position to maybe give up the pawns that you have on the right side and just bank everything on that passed c-pawn. But it has to be well timed. You can't just run with a king immediately.
Yeah, the problem is for this White king that you're cut off at the moment. You're cut off on the second rank. So you, as Jovanka mentioned, so you kind of want to just make a mad dash for it and help support your c-pawn forward. This is your extra pawn after all, and they say pass pawns are there to be pushed. But it's hard to do that. The black rook doing a good job of cutting the king. So maybe you want to use this route as well. You could kind of come from the side and centralize yourself. You need to get your king into the action. You can't play without that piece. Kings are so important in the endgame. But then again, Ju Wenjun, she stepped back with her rook now. She has to deal with threats of attacks against her pawns. This pawn is a bit weak, and the white rook stuck in front of this pawn now. If you could kind of flick the 2 rooks around, if you could change their order, white would be winning. Rooks belong behind passed pawns. White's rook is currently trapped in front of its own pawn. So if we catch up with the current game position, both sides improving their kings now. To me, it's going to be very hard to win this game. White's rook is just stuck in front of its own pawn. It's purely defensive, passive. Black's rook doing a good job now of eyeing up this pawn, eyeing up the pawn here. And yeah, I think Lei Tingjie has done everything right so far to try and draw this game, but still a long way to go. Still a lot of pawns still on the board.
Well, Hans Niemann, a great win for him in round 2 here against David Anton. So 3 points for Hans Niemann. That is a great start for the American. All right, and this one, well, David's saying now, probably will be hard to win it. If anyone's going to win it, is that White?
It's only White with winning chances. Black fighting for the draw.
Okay. Well, she doesn't have that much time either, Ju Wenjun. Only 2.5 minutes left on the clock to find that win.
Yeah, she's sped up, though.
She has sped up, and as David will tell you, this is the kind of position that he excels in because he can just make as many non-moves as possible. So, you know, watch out for that white king. It can make, I don't know, 10 moves without making any changes to the actual position. And, you know, build up time on the clock.
Yeah, the reason I like these positions, these types of positions, is because I have commitment issues, as you mentioned, Jovanka. I don't want to commit the white king. I don't want to commit the pawns. You just wait and wait and wait until your opponent makes a mistake. And here, I think winning this game will require a mistake from Black. But mistakes might happen. For example, if Black puts the king on the wrong square, if Black retreats the king, then White could push a pawn up in the centre of the board and fix that Black king into passivity forever. If the Black rook ever kind of goes away and allows the White rook to get active again, maybe there's some winning chances for White. So you just have to wait and be patient. And Zhu Wenjun, she's maybe known for more dynamic chess, maybe more attacking chess in general, but I've seen her win some really kind of technical endgames like this, including in more championship matches. So, yeah, I'm still reluctant to call this a draw, despite the fact that it's very, very hard for White to push any pawns forward without creating weaknesses. So, OK, Lei Tingjie thinking right now, I would just pass here for Black. I would maybe just move the rook down 1 square, the Black rook. I want to keep it behind White's extra pawn on the c-file. And if you just drop it down, you could threaten some checks. You could just swing across and annoy White from behind, attacking loads of pawns. Yeah, you don't want to commit anything here with Black. You just want to sit. And I think both players are waiting here. White's waiting for a mistake. Black's just waiting and saying, you can't make progress. And what do we think? Odds are most likely a draw, but...
Yeah, I mean, activity of the pieces is so important in the ending, and especially the king's activity, right? So if White will manage to activate his king at a certain point, something what you mentioned, David, like maybe by pushing this pawn, central pawn, and then moving, you know, pushing this king towards the edge of the board, maybe he has, I mean, White will have some chances here. But I was surprised that Lei Tingjie, she went for this position so quickly, so surely. Like, she was so confident to play that, made few moves very quickly. So it's like probably she feels quite confident about this rook ending.
Yeah, maybe she studied something similar before.
Yes.
And just to show the point as well, you mentioned there, White's king would love to get active, but if it goes too far away, then the Black rook might start coming behind and attacking the pawns on this side of the board. And again, if you give a check, you would love to kick the Black king back, because now White's king can get active and maybe start, not go back, might start marching forward. But the problem is Black's king would then be the active one, and Black's king would step forward, and now the Black king completely shuts off the White king's progress. So, OK, this is patient stuff from both players. As I advocated, just make slow moves, just 1 step forward. Maybe then White goes behind to try and just pretend that you can kind of swing across and maybe start marching this guy forward eventually, but either way,
There's also
difficult.
a nice idea maybe to run with the king and use the rook as a defender.
OK, yeah.
As a defender of the pawns on the right.
For example, if Black waits, you could move across, and now if the rook slides across, yeah, as you mentioned, Jovanka, you bring the White rook across and use it as a defender of the pawns. The only thing you've got to be careful of, I guess, is that maybe you get shut out of the game. And this White rook now is not coming back. But then again, at least you have free, this pawn is free to roam, so free to run up the board.
Yeah.
OK, interesting. It's still really complicated, despite the evaluation bar not being excited at all in this position. Let's go back to the players. Can Lei Tingjie defend this? And OK, she's down to 1 minute as well. OK, on the defensive side, that's not good. Your nerves will be jangling a bit later on, especially if you lose control, if White does something you don't expect. OK, and she does commit with one of the pawns. I would have been hesitant to do this because now White's rook can step up and the Black king is forced back. Okay, she must have calculated this one. And she must be gambling that both kings will now be passive. Okay, really committal, that decision.
Yeah, definitely committal. I don't know if that pawn could be a weakness, could be a strength, like you say. But David, I do have a question from EW, and it pertains to your tie. They ask, will David sign the back of the tie?
And actually, you ask that, but it's already signed. So.
Great job. You thought a few moves ahead, right?
Exactly. I planned ahead. I foresaw that question.
And I do have to tell you, the current bid for your tie is $400.
Oh,
That's
wow.
an incredible amount of generosity from everyone. So thank you.
Yeah, I feel like I should do more than just sign it now. No, nothing. Yeah. I meant like, thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic. Your generosity out there in the world to our viewers is fantastic. So thank you so much. And we're going to keep this fundraiser going for 8 days. And we have content coming up for you to be able to donate, auctions, and many things coming up. Many moves coming out as well.
Yeah, so White's rook did indeed go up to the top of the board. So White's pawn can actually start running, this White C pawn. It might not get too far, but meanwhile, Black is just harassing the White king now, giving some checks, attacking some pawns. White's king not being able to join the action, join the fun. The more I look at it, the more I think actually Lei Tingjie's decision to just block the pawns maybe will be justified. It's going to be hard for White to break through now. There's nothing else to do. At some point, you have to start pushing your White C pawn, but then the Black rook has even more scope to give checks. It's going to be really hard for the White king, and therefore hard for Zhu Wenjun to win.
And also, Zhu Wenjun is going to be thinking about, does she go all in, roll the dice, and run with the king towards the center of the board and bank on her pawn being the faster one, or is she just going to play it safe and maybe just accept that it's a draw?
Yeah, that's a good point, because any winning attempt here involving the White king making a run for it comes with loads of risk. If you sacrifice all of White's pawns on the right side of the board, maybe White will be even slower in that race. And you mentioned the C pawn, Jovanka, being maybe easier to support for the White king than the A pawn, but it's also easier for the Black king to stop it than if the pawn were maybe a couple of ranks the other way, a couple of files, sorry, the other way. So, yeah, it's difficult here. And she was just weighing up the risk, Zhu Wenjun, of running with the White king towards that pawn. She says no, just stepping back with the White rook.
And I have a feeling that Zhu Wenjun will probably admit that it's just a draw. I don't think she's going to take the risk and go with a mad king dash towards the center of the board. I have to say, I once commentated in a tournament where there were very similar endgames like this on the board. And I have to say, like 50% of the players actually went all in and they went crazy with the king and they lost.
Oh.
And I remember watching, I was like, it's unbelievable, but they lost it. I mean, especially when the clock is ticking down. It's okay.
She's going for it.
She's going for it.
She's not settling for any draw anytime soon. And, OK, she's offering a trade of pawns, because now if Black captures this pawn that has just moved, then White's king gets slightly more active. I don't think it changes too much. I think Black should actually capture that pawn and then start maybe giving some checks with the Black rook to force the White king back. But, OK, it's good to see she's trying.
But, I mean, it shows the fighting spirit of both girls. In general, women, they like to play until the end, and if they think they have chances, they will try to push. And
yeah, they're both very ambitious players. I mean, they always, that's why they've risen to the top of world chess, right? So
actually, you have to be so ambitious, right, in order to improve in chess all the time. You have to try to play every position until the end. We have a great example, world champion Magnus Carlsen as well, who is, who can, how do you say this, sneeze the water from the stone? Is it correct?
Yeah, I heard that term, yeah.
Yes. So I think it's a very important quality.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely what we saw in the World Championship match, right? When Magnus won Game 6, the longest game in World Championship history, he was definitely squeezing in that game. Yeah.
And Zhu Wenjun, she's trying to squeeze, but Lei Tingjie is not letting her squeeze water from the stone. Black gave a check with the rook, forcing the White king back, and now look at the Black rook attacking two pawns at the same time. Lei Tingjie is OK, she has just won her pawn back. It's now level pawns, but more importantly, the pawns are disappearing. And this one is going to fizzle out to a draw. We could see a scenario where both rooks start going for the enemy pawns. Everything just gets traded off. And rook against rook is just going to be a draw. So, yeah, Zhu Wenjun, you can tell body language as well. She knows her chance is gone. But I don't think she had any winning chances because Lei Tingjie just defended so well this rook endgame. Really tenacious defense.
Yeah, you can almost see the disappointment on her body language. Will it be a draw offer or will they repeat some moves?
I think they will repeat now.
I think they will repeat.
Yeah, here we go. Move repetition coming in, and we're going to see a draw between the two female players in this tournament.